Hello, everyone. Hi. My name is Rachel Sheppard. I'm the Director of Global Marketing at. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about pitching and ideas. So if you're an early stage startup founder, I'm super excited to have you here. Let's kick this off. I'd love to hear where you're from in the chat, and then I'm going to get my PowerPoint going and we'll get started reviewing some ideas and some pitches. So I'd love to hear where you're from, where you're joining me, and a little bit about your startup as well. If you'd like to throw that in the chat as I get my presentation up quickly. All right, well, I'm going to get started. This session today it's a female founder pitch bootcamp. So I am going to review some ideas and some pitches. Farhat, thank you so much for letting me know you can hear me. I really appreciate it. Ideas and some pitches, and I want to give you some feedback and hopefully identify some action items and next steps for any of the startups on the call. I work a lot with early stage founders, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Rachel Sheppard. Who the heck am I and why am I here talking to you about this? I'm Rachel Sheppard. I'm the Director of Global Marketing at the Founder Institute, which is the world's largest pre-seed startup accelerator. We work with early stage founders in over 180 cities in 65 countries. And you can learn more about us by going to fi.co/enrolling to see if you have a program near you. But I'm also the co-creator of the Female Founder Initiative. About 4 years ago, myself and our head of admissions, we just wanted to see more women starting companies around the world, and Founder Institute has such a global reach. We really wanted to kind of draw the network's attention back to the importance of diversity and really starting to, provide more opportunities for women to start companies. And to date, we've had a really, really great growth in that. We've gone from 17% globally to 31% female-founded companies in our portfolio. And our goal by end of this year is to reach 40%, and hopefully we'll reach 50 the year after. And that is something we're really proud of. And we've seen a lot of growth, and not just in certain regions, but in areas all over the world. Every corner of the world has seen an increase in the number of female founders, which is something I'm really proud of. I'm calling in today from the Bay Area, from California, so I'd love to hear where you're calling in from. And please tell me. I am a Bay Area native, but I do get a chance to work with people all over the world, which is one of the most exciting things. Fun fact, I'm a former veterinary assistant. I actually have a degree in animal science and management. So if you have a pet startup, that's why there's a picture of me and one of my dogs, Bernie. If you have a pet startup or anything in the veterinary space, I'd love to continue a chat offline. And I have my email here at the very end that I'm happy to share with you. The pet space is really interesting. And there's a lot of new tech opportunities there as well. So I love having those conversations. And then let me go ahead on to the next slide. So the agenda for today, as I mentioned, I'm going to go over some startup idea best practices, as well as we'll go over some pitch best practices. And then I want to review your ideas and pitches. So I want to hear from you. I want to hear about your startup. I believe there's even an option for you to request to turn on your audio. So maybe that's an option. We can just hear you pitch. I'll give you some structure on how to do that. So based on how Founder Institute recommends that you pitch your startup. It's a really good formula. It covers all the bases, and it'll be ideal for giving somebody a really good understanding of what your company does. And again, I see we're getting more people joining us. Please do tell me where you're from in the chat or where you're joining me from today. Love to hear from you. I want to make this really interactive. This is technically a small room, and so let's make sure that everybody gets a chance. Oh, Brianna from Toronto, thank you so much. And Debbie's calling from Durango, Colorado. Awesome. I've had a chance to spend some time in Colorado, and you may actually see like a Newfoundland walk behind me at some point. And I was able to fly out to Denver to adopt him and bring him home from Colorado last year, which was really awesome. Hi, Menkha. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Forgive me if I'm not. From India. Welcome. Donna from Barcelona. Awesome. Ladies, please do make sure you have a chance to connect. Maria from Atlanta. Awesome. Wonderful. Connect with each other. women are excellent at community and helping each other, and I do believe that all ships will rise with the tide. So I'm really excited to please do be sure to connect with one another. In addition to with me, I'll leave my information at the end. All right. And my last agenda item is really going to be, where do we go from here? So how do you keep in touch with me if you want to? How can I continue to help you if I can? Samantha from the Bay Area. Hi, welcome. Anne, you were on the last call. Yes. From the Southwest Washington. Thank you so much for joining me over here as well. I just had a great conversation with Amy Wu from Lightspeed Ventures, which was awesome. And Anne was on that call as well. All right. So let's get started with the nitty gritty of some of the advice I have to share with you today. So startup idea best practices. If you're at the very early stage, so the ideation stage of your startup, there's a few things I want you to think about. And obviously there are even more, sort of ideas and feedback that you can have. And if we connect afterwards, I'm happy to share even more information. But the first thing is, and this is something I see that founders don't necessarily hone in on very well, sometimes when they pitch to me a very early idea, is that it has to be a real problem. And those real problems usually fall under one of three categories. Either it's inconvenience, and it has to be an inconvenience that's big enough for people to pay for. And so that's really important. It can't just be an inconvenience where they're like, oh, okay, but I don't necessarily need to pay for that, right? Think about your life and think about how you go about your day-to-day. There are lots of inconveniences that you don't pay to avoid, right? And that's something that you want to make sure your idea solves, is something that people will pay for. Inefficiencies. Everybody is working with not enough time and too much to do, right? And so if there are inefficiencies that your solutions can solve, that's a really important way to start identifying an opportunity or an idea. And this one I really wanted to hone in on, which is inevitability, which by that we mean obsolescence, automation, or tech adoption. All of those three things are happening in spades right now. That is happening quite a bit because right now we're in a situation, we are in a global pandemic. So although we have people from several different countries on this call, we're all experiencing that in some way, shape, or form. And that is going to cause a lot of technologies to become obsolete, or even, sort of industries to become obsolete without technology. That's something else to consider. There's going to be a lot of automation, right? Especially as there is still potential for COVID resurgence, and therefore people have to reduce the amount of time they spend together. What automations are we seeing happening? I'm actually having a really exciting conversation tomorrow with a supply chain expert who's going to talk about the acceleration of automation that's happened there, right? So that supply chains can continue during the time of COVID. And then lastly is tech adoption. So I have recently FaceTimed with my 92-year-old grandmother, and if that isn't evidence that everybody has adopted tech, if they weren't going to before, I don't know what is. I'd love to hear from you guys, your stories, if you know of things that are like, oh, this is really a sign of tech adoption. Someone who I know would never adopt tech before, they've now really leaned into that, and they are now using food delivery, for example, or really leveraging the internet because they have had to due to COVID-19. And so my action item for you on this slide, if you are in the idea stage, and even if you're a little further along, I would recommend this even if you have an MVP, even if you have a beta right now, is to conduct lots and lots of customer interviews. And I say that because everyone's problems have changed. Everyone's problems have changed. They've been reprioritized, they've been readjusted, they've changed significantly. And there's two ways I recommend that you do customer surveys. There's a traditional way, which is, or customer interviews, excuse me. Traditional way would be surveys. A lot of people use things like Typeform to ask their customers questions and to get a lot of customer feedback. I highly recommend that. I also recommend going a level deeper. So if you have some people that are champions for your product, which I've done this many times, is I actually will do a Zoom call and I will use their website, use their app, and they can watch me do so. Now that sounds a little bit odd in some way, but it actually, as a founder or when you're developing a product, can provide you with a ton of great user information, because you're able to see that I instinctively go and click on this button, and then you're able to be like, okay, well, that was different from how I thought someone would use my website. what made you want to go there? And you can kind of stop and ask questions. I've done that with a few founders when I fall under their target audience, which we'll talk a little bit about. A few of our founders, when they have a product I would personally use as a consumer, I've done some of these customer interviews via Zoom, and they've been able to learn a lot from my consumer behavior with their product and watching me interact with it, and have been able to make iterations and build a better product as a result. All of this, by the way, is all part of the greater picture of you being able to prove to investors and advisors and potentially even your employees why your product is really good, why you're going to be a lasting company as we survive COVID-19 and in the long run, right? Because you got to get people to believe in what you're doing, and all of these data points prove that and provide you with that great backing, right? And it's more so than just words. You're like, no, look at that. All of these people want to use this product and are willing to pay for this product, right? Any questions about startup idea best practices, any of the things that I just went over, please do put them in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear a little bit more if you're possibly even thinking about an idea. Let's start to get some of that in the chat so that we can go over it. That's going to be, oh, good, Debbie. I'm glad this was helpful. A good portion of time is going to be spent sort of reviewing ideas. So I would love to hear from you. And then if you want additional feedback, I put a link on this slide here, fi.co/feedback. You can actually submit ideas to the Founder Institute team, and we will email you with feedback on how that idea was structured, if we thought there was anything that was missing, if we think there's any next steps you should take. Okay, love to hear some thoughts. Definitely keep that chat going. All right, next slide. Startup pitch best practices. So there's a few things that I want to talk about regarding pitching. I hear pitches a lot, not just from female founders, but we also host a lot of hot seat type events where we hear these pitches, and that's kind of a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. And there are a few key pieces of information that need to be in every single startup pitch, some of which are left out more often than not. So I'll talk about those. So the first of which is a really defined offering. And sometimes I would recommend to every founder writing out your pitch and then going back and adding more specifics, because a lot of times you'll say something like, my defined offering is a website. Well, is it a website, or is it really a platform, or is it really an app? Be as specific as you can. Is it a mobile app? Is it a desktop app? Is it a dual-sided platform? Really kind of get involved in the language around startups and understand how to best describe your offering and the technology. Don't just use buzzwords. That's really important. So if you're going to say AI or machine learning, you should know that technology in and out, because as soon as you say it, somebody will dig in and say, like, well, tell me a little bit more about that. How does that actually work? And so that's a piece of advice I would say on your offering. Just be clear, be specific. Don't use too many buzzwords. And buzzwords would be words like amazing and this and that. Let us decide if it's amazing. No descriptors. Just be very clear about the technology and the offering. The second, and this is actually one of the most common mistakes I see, is the defined audience is not specific enough. So for example, the solution will be, I have an app for women to help them save money. Women is actually not very specific enough. It does sort of, narrow it down a little bit, but you want to go even further. And a more specific example would be 30 to 40-year-old working mothers. If that was your target audience, that would be very clear to me. I could very clearly picture who you were targeting. And for me, what that does, and this is why this is so important, is that it goes from me saying, me trying to think about what your product does to now I can actually understand what your go-to-market strategy might be like. I can understand where your platforms will be, how this will look. Giving a more defined audience actually fills out the picture a lot more than you think, especially because we work with so many startups and we see a lot of these things. So it gives us a lot of contextual information. So be as specific as you possibly can. And I'm getting some questions, and I want to stop and answer those. How do market research to know if people are interested in the product? I would make some assumptions. So if you have a product, who do you see your product working for, right? Who will this work for best? And you may have 2 or 3 categories in mind, and I would start to test those. And I would test them on a variety of different ways, right? So I would say, I actually just worked with a founder through this exact thing, right? So she has 3 different categories that could use her product, but there's one that has the biggest market opportunity in terms of dollars, therefore is more interesting to investors, and ultimately more likely to drive more revenue, right? So that's really important. And then 2, they're most likely to be able to pay for it. So that was something that was really interesting too. So like Gen Z women were another category, but they're not at the level, they're not quite in a decade where they're making enough money yet. And so they may be, it's good to look to them in the future and have a marketing plan for them across your roadmap that's maybe 5 years out, but you have to consider who can pay you for this right now. So I would say I would look into those 2 things. Anushari, I hope that helps you answer your question a little bit. And then Hananine, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your names. I'm doing my best, and I would love to be corrected. By the way, I want to make sure I get that right. Will I share my presentation on LinkedIn? I usually don't share my presentation on LinkedIn, but I'm happy to, and I'm going to provide my email at the end too, and my LinkedIn also. So if you would love to connect with me, I can send it to you directly, 100%. Brianna says, "What about an idea that is more social good based?" Great question. So there's something that's really happening right now as a shift in consumer behavior, and in a very good way. I think people want to know who you are, why I should give you my money, and also what are you going to do with that money? Are you just pocketing it all for profit, or are you having some social impact on the other end? I would highly recommend weaving that into your pitch. So there's a wonderful company I've been working with, and they're actually providing more, they're creating a more sustainable supply chain for chocolate. And it's actually, there's a consumer education piece that needs to happen there, but that is definitely something that is going to make her stand out versus everyone else, right? And so this actually kind of gets me into my last point here, which is, what is your unique value proposition, also known as your secret sauce or your UVP? The impact components and the social good components of what your company will do should be part of that UVP. It's what makes you competitive. And it's also what makes you stand out versus your competitors, right? So if you are giving more back, like let's say I'm looking at 3 different hats, and I know that one hat plants 100 trees and another hat helps provide water for women all around the world who have a hard time having access to water, perhaps. And then the third tree, or the third hat, is just for fun. I would buy one of the first 2 hats, and I would look into, okay, let's see which one do I really, what's part of what I'm trying to really work on right now as a human. What do I want to support most? And I think all of that matters. And forgive me, guys, if you can hear my dogs barking in the background. Unfortunately, that's life working from home, right? Brianna, does that help you provide more context around your company? And by the way, I'd love to hear about your company a little bit and about the social good that you're doing. I think value first marketing is going to be the only marketing in the short term, by the way. There's a great podcast called the CMO podcast, which talks, it's a lot of marketing executives from very large companies, but they talk a lot about marketing from a value person or purpose-driven perspective. And I think I firmly believe that's the only way to market in the future, because it's what people care about more, which is wonderful news for everyone, right? Okay, so hope you, it's really hard to read that feedback link. So I hope, I will share some more links at the end. Absolutely, Debbie. And I'll also be sharing the presentation. Hopefully you guys will connect with me via email and LinkedIn. I'm happy to do so. Is a beta version required for a pitch? Smitha asks. No, absolutely not. You should be, if you have an idea, you can have, a thought about hats, because let's continue talking about that. Hats that result in trees being planted. That is enough of an idea where you can start to work through these different pieces. Okay, so what is the defined offering? I'm offering clothing opportunities for environmentally conscious 30 to 35-year-old men and women. And I'm solving a clear problem because I am providing them with an option to buy clothing that is going to make a difference on Earth and on the environmental impacts. And my UVP is that I have the most sufficient supply chain. So actually 50% of my proceeds can go to planting trees. So I just made all of that up. So it's not excellent, but it is something I just made up off the top of my head. And you want to make sure that you're getting as specific as you can about the offering, the audience, the clear problem. And so what is the issue that you're solving? What is that problem that you've really worked through, which we talked about on the last slide? And then how are you going to stand out versus your competitors? And so I haven't seen any ideas come through on the chat yet, and I'd love to hear from you because here is the format in its final form here. So my company, blank, name of company, is developing a defined offering to help a defined audience solve a problem with a secret sauce. So if anyone is brave enough to share with me your pitch, I promise I won't. I'll be very nice, but I'm going to give lots of feedback because that's what I do, and that's how I can help you best, right? I'd love to give you some idea feedback and feedback on the pitch itself. If you have any other questions for me, I'd love to answer those now and give people some time to start formulating their pitches. Oh, Tanya would love to try and pitch. Yes, Tanya, thank you. Let's hear from you. I think there's a way that you can request to share your audio from your perspective, and I don't know what that looks like on my perspective, but let's go ahead and one request in the queue. So let's go ahead, Tanya. I think I'm gonna add you here. And I think that gives you an option. Yes, it's on the top. Tanya, did that give you an option to go ahead and pitch? I clicked on your name. I think that was the right move. Let's see. Tanya, were you able to go ahead and see the opportunity to pitch? I hope you were. I'd love to hear from you. Even if you want to type it in the chat, I'd love to hear from you as well. We've got 40 ladies in the room right now. If you're just joining me, here's the rundown. I'm here to help you improve your pitch or your startup idea. Oh, Tanya, I'm so sorry if it's not working. If you wouldn't mind, if you'd love to put it in the chat, I'm happy to review it again. Let's see. Smith is giving it a try as well. Let's see what that does. I wonder if I stop sharing my screen, if that may help. But I'm here to review your ideas and your pitches. And I'll go ahead and make sure. So you want to have the name of your company, a defined offering, a defined audience, solve a problem, and also tell me about the secret sauce. The best place to look up that format is at this link right here, which is fi.co/madlibs. You can keep that for reference. You can absolutely connect with me on LinkedIn or via email to send me your pitch, but I'm here today and I've got some more time. Also, if we're not able to review any pitches in the short term, as I'm trying to bring people in, I'd love to answer any questions you might have. What is the biggest challenge you're having with your startup right now, or even your startup idea? Oh, Smitha. Hello. What's going on?
Yeah.
What was that, Smitha? I think it was working. If you would like to pitch, you can go ahead and do so.
Hi. Can you hear me now?
I sure can. Would you like to share with us your startup idea or your pitch? And I'd be happy to kind of talk you through some next steps and see if we can give you some action items to move forward with.
Yeah. So, I had actually put up a business plan for an incubator program, but that program got canceled. So I had done a bit of research on it's a mobile app, and the product name is Grocerate. A one-line description is it's the ultimate little shopper helper that helps you track all of your grocery expenses and reminds you to go for your next purchase before you run out of stock. So that is the product in one-line description. The target audience is any working professional. So the main objective behind this app is you don't have to spend your day looking at your stock before you go to the grocery. If you happen to be out passing the supermarket and you have this app with you and you look at it, you'll know if what all are the regular things that you have to buy. Is it still there with you, or is it out of stock? Is it time to buy or not? So it's kind of like a tracker for you to when to buy your products, and also as a way your expenses.
Okay.
So it is
So it's kind of okay, so let's narrow in on some of those pieces a little bit. The first of which is, I think your target audience needs to be so working professionals is too broad. And even though, so this is the really important part, and it's why I often see a lot of really broad audience categories, is that it's true that any working professional could use your solution, right? And hey, settle down. Sorry. Sorry. Any working professional can use your solution. That's perfect, right? But the reality is that who are you really building it for? Because you don't want to build it for any working professional. That's where you get into a situation where you're building a very general product. Instead, you want to actually build something that's very specifically designed for a group of people, right? So that's going to be, sorry, my Newfoundland, he's been very on that. Hi, buddy. And so it's really going to be more about, are you building it for women because they are, I'm not trying to make a generalization, but like, are women between the ages of 30 and 40 doing more of the grocery shopping in the area? And if so, they may use the product very differently from all of the other working professionals that could potentially use this, right? So you really, really, really want to build it for a specific type of person. You want to get as specific as you possibly can. And so that would be my first piece of feedback there. And then secondly, tell me a little bit more about the technology. You said it was an app, right?
Oh yeah, the videos work. Yes, it is an app. So that's where I'm having difficulty. So now it's kind of in Excel. So I'm just trying to create it on the back end, but I haven't given much thought on the technology. Like, I know that there's going to be a lot of AI and machine learning involved, but I don't have much of an idea on where it should, like the technology aspect of it. So that's why I was asking you about the beta version. Is that a requirement?
Yeah,
when you do a pitch.
It's not a requirement. So what you may have to do when you're going and you're pitching these things in their very early stage is you may have to make some assumptions, right, about how the technology will work and start to build it out from there, because you need to have a pitch in order to get anyone interested in trying it, right? So you're like, okay, here's what this is, because I'd like you to try it so that you can get more, so that I can get more feedback, and then you can try it for free, something like that. So you're going to need to have a pitch further outlined in order to be able to even get people engaged, right? Because you may have to have a landing page,
right,
something like that. So you may have to make some assumptions early on, and this is something where sometimes I'm a perfectionist myself. I have a hard time making assumptions without a lot of data. But sometimes you have to make an assumption in order to gather data and get feedback, and then you can improve that assumption moving forward as you start to work towards the data.
Okay.
Is that helpful? So I would say, was that helpful, that feedback at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I was like, I had the idea. I did a primary research, like I did like a competitive research, like what are the products available, where I can create value. And I got ideas on how I could possibly monetize it in the future, not immediately, but sometime in the future. Mm-hmm. So I got ideas for that, but I didn't know how to actually showcase, create a viable, I think it's called a viable product, or, kind of like a, setting it up and kind of like to demonstrate it to somebody. So that's where I was getting stuck, because I have like I'm doing it on Excel with macros, and I'm just trying to see if it will work. But if it's an app, obviously it's going to be more, the scale is going to be much larger. You expect more customers. So, there are a lot of other considerations to look into in terms of technology. So that's where I needed, I wasn't clear how to go about that section. Yeah, but I understand where you're saying you have to try it out to get the data to see if people are interested in it. And
Right.
the initial.
Yeah, and that would be my next action item for you, is really narrowing down that customer audience. So testing it. So make 2 assumptions and assume 2 categories and start to narrow it down to see who's most likely to use it, and then who's most likely to pay for it, right? The more important piece.
Right.
And if it is a paid option, right? Are people paying $1.99 for the app or what have you, right? Like, what does this look like? What does your revenue model look like? Start to kind of test those assumptions, and then you'll start to lead in the right direction. I know it's really hard as a startup. You're flying the plane as you're building it, right? So it's hard to get traction and to build the product at the same time. But you just want to help sort of A/B test things all along the way so that you're able to directionally, send your company in the right direction. I hope that's helpful.
Right. Yeah. That really helped. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Thanks, Smita. Thanks so much for jumping on and pitching. And then I want to talk about Tanya's product a little bit here. So Tanya says, I'm so sorry that the whole thing crashed on you, Tanya. Thank you for coming back on and sharing with us your pitch. Let me go ahead and share my screen again so that people have a chance to look at the formatting. So we have a little less than 10 minutes left, but I'd love to review as many pitches as I can. So Tanya says, customers are used to frictionless user experiences, which is, in a sense, electricity has been, but the kind of choice consumers expect to be able to make in response to climate change, extreme weather, and wildfires disrupts utilities. Community Energy Labs is reinventing energy choice. Like Spotify or Airbnb, our multi-sided platform delivers frictionless consumer choice on the front end without disrupting power markets or the grid in the back end. Our innovative architecture uses distributed computing and machine learning to bridge the needs of net zero energy communities and consumers with energy technology companies and utilities. Okay, Tanya, I think you're on a really good track here. You've given me lots of information to work with. I'd like to know a little bit more about your consumer. So again, that was something that I think is missing, right? So you're talking about energy customers. And again, this is something where everyone can use it. Yes, 100%. But there are always going to be community choice aggregators and cities. So cities are actually your consumer. This is a B2B product. Large customers. Okay, so that was not very clear at first, or I guess it's not B2B, but it is in a sense because it's to municipalities, which is very interesting. And so they're larger aggregations of consumers or net zero builders. Okay, so that's super interesting that you have that. And so I would say that was really good. You did a lot to explain the problem so that there's a lot of sort of monopolies happening around energy, right? Like that where I live in California, everybody has the same energy provider. And so your goal is to kind of step in and see if you can provide alternatives that help people sort of make a better energy choice during that time. One of the things that Tanya did that I really do like is when you mention another company as a reference, so like a Spotify or Airbnb, because that is something where I already have that in mind, and so I know I've used those things, so I have an idea of how this would look. Is sort of like I can go and choose what energy provider I would have. And it sounds like it would happen a lot on the back end without disrupting any power to the consumer, which is super important. So that's really interesting as well. And your innovative architecture uses distributed computing and machine learning to bridge the needs of net zero energy communities and consumers with energy technology companies and utilities. I would actually say that there's a lot that's in this that's really great. So the problem is very clear. the audience is clearer now that you've explained it a little more. I think for me, it may be that I don't have a ton of experience in this industry with energy. So that's, probably more on me than it is to you, but it is good to know. Sometimes highly technical solutions will use a lot of technical language, which actually makes it really hard for the average person to kind of understand what you're talking about, or even maybe an investor who maybe is very early stage and doesn't have that industry experience involved. And then I didn't. Community Energy Labs is the name of your company. Perfect. And you do have a defined offering. So you've done a great job, Tanya. You've got a lot of really great, sort of pieces put into this pitch, and I really like it. The one thing I would say is just I'd love to have a little bit less technical language, just because of making it a little more broad. But all that to be said, I would love to hear from you. Like, what's your biggest challenge right now? What's the next step? If there's anything else that you could use some help with, like how far are you in terms of your traction, and have you had a chance to start testing this in any specific city? Tightening it up, yeah, shortening it a little bit might be a good idea as well. Awesome, and we can continue conversation offline. So I have one more I would love to go over, and let's see. I have Brianna on here. Let's see if Brianna is able to join the panel and share with us her pitch. In the interim, I'd love to go over Anushree's. I am developing an HR management system specifically for small companies and startups. Even though there are other HR management systems available, my software is different as it incorporates talent management and is completely customizable to help clients with individual requirements. I am still in the idea phase and trying to get feedback from people actually using similar software. So Anushree, you're kind of in a unique position in the sense that HR management systems is actually quite crowded. It's a crowded space. There's a lot of different solutions there. I've worked with a lot, and I know we have a lot in our Founder Institute portfolio as well. And so you're going to want to really talk about, and I know you're at the idea stage, but as a next step, I would really start to see how you can stand out. And also in this particular case, how do you stand out post-COVID? So the way that people hire has changed all around the world. Now people are hiring completely remote, and bringing on people and onboarding them remotely. Onboarding remote, not an easy thing to do. And I think that's something a lot of companies are ill prepared for. So maybe there's some opportunities there for your solution to step in. And I would consider that as well. Sometimes there's a variety of different, sort of sections within an industry that you can start to build and pivot your product into. So for example, are you really into the section of like finding talent? Is it managing talent? Is it onboarding talent? All of these are a lot of different areas. Okay, great. And then Sharon said, my company Pole Position for Life has been developing a new project facilitation service that lowers chronic multi-level interaction resistance by using strategically trained project facilitators instead of project managers, and pairing them with dedicated strategic precision coach mentor, which turbo boosts roadblock assessment, problem solving flexibility, and team adaptability so that projects run smoother and remove the toxicity factor. More support equals more effectiveness equals more fun. There's a new project facilitation service that lowers chronic multi-level by using strategic. I'm trying to figure out who exactly your customer is. So I think you've gone into a lot of detail on the problem and the solution here, Sharon. I'd love to learn a little bit more about who your target audience is, and forgive me if I've missed it. I know I'm kind of reading through it relatively quickly. And I would also love to know a little bit more about what space you're in. I think that's kind of unclear, right? So there's project managers and project facilitators across all different types of spaces and all different types of companies. What company are you most interested in serving, and which company has the most to lose with a toxicity factor, as you said, which is very interesting. But yeah, so what we're doing is so different and fairly complex to describe. So I'd like to get a simpler, tighter description. SMEs. Okay, great. I would make sure to mention SMEs in your pitch, Sharon, and I do agree that it could be tighter. You did use some descriptor words, which I know are really exciting and fun, but you definitely want to, that's, precious real estate when it comes to a pitch. So you want to cut those out as much as you can. I would also try to to get a very, very clear description of what your solution does. And sometimes that takes having a conversation with someone and really narrowing it down as to what words need to be said in order to explain it to somebody who's outside of your industry. I would use your family and friends as a great way to start explaining it to them. And once they know a little bit more, really digging in on the words as much as possible, because it is a process. I have worked with founders to come up with many, many rounds of your pitch. It won't necessarily be perfect. It'll always be evolving. And so it's really good to have that moving forward. All right. I'm so sorry, but I do have to go, and this is the end of our session. And so thank you all for being here and for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. If you would like to get in touch with me, here, I'll go ahead and increase the size. My email is rachel@founderinstitute.com. I am the co-creator of the Female Founder Initiative, so you can find me over at www.femalefounderinitiative.com as well. If you'd like to see what cities at Founder Institute is enrolling in, you can check it out at fi.co/enrolling. Please send me an email if you can. I hope this was at least a little bit helpful for everyone, and I will put my LinkedIn in the chat as well as I close out. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful morning, evening, and afternoon. Bye-bye.